Yes.
Sitting? All right, everyone on Zoom, can you hear me? Do a thumbs up if you can hear me. Oh, good, good, good. All right, I think we're ready to begin. Welcome. I'll just get on my knees here. Barely see my head. Welcome to another Think Again. Kind of Think Again. We might have more on Zoom here. We've got a few here. How many, Jen? Okay, so some others might join us. Delighted to have Fiona and Ian here to talk about what's going on in Ukraine. And I know a lot of us know what's going on there, but these two have been there on the front lines. So I'm grateful that they have sacrificed a great deal, risked really their lives to do the work they're doing, and then to come here in this nice, safe, comfortable home of Jenna and Rob Spangler for having us here and hosting, and for Jenna monitoring this. Let's see. I hope this finds everybody well. My friend Davis is going to be shared a beautiful piece of music. Write notes here up. And she may want to mention something about that. I'll play it first. It's her vocalist, Miriam Stay, and friend. And then Andy's on the dulcimer. We watched the video on the big TV behind me. And he also did the photography. And she arranged this whole thing. And then violinist is Kristen Washburn. So three of them.
I just wanted to mention that this was, we were granted permission.
Music, which is quite lovely.
Thank you.
I'll read the words to you after. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to distinguish what they are. And I'll probably let Andy say a little bit before we start about the song.
Do you want me to introduce it?
Really?
Would you like me to introduce it first or after?
Should be picking me up too. Gosh. So I'm not, so is that better or is that still not great?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear Andy. So
My mic is on. Can anyone else hear me?
I can't hear Andy at all.
huh.
That's okay. The music speaks for itself.
Everything's muted, right?
Like if I'm very close, is that any better?
Can people hear better now?
Hello,
can-
hello. How is this?
Yeah,
That's very
Is this
good.
better?
sounds like it's better if we talk into that, but still not able to hear Andy.
I'm off mute. I'm not muted.
Hear Andy.
Oh, can they?
I have my. I have my volume.
Andy now.
Can you hear me now?
No?
The music will speak for itself.
Hang it. Let me try something real quick here.
Ask her to speak again.
Can you speak, Andy?
I can speak. Can you hear me?
There we go.
It's
There we go. I believe the music speaks for itself, and I'll put a link in the chat. This was How Long, O Lord, Most Holy and True. What inspired me to share this with Jay was the James Talmage essay, How Long, O Lord, How Long? And also, Fiona, thank you, but it is remarkable, the story of a fellow British Mormon scholar who wrote Jesus the Christ in the temple and began it in 1914. And he spoke quite a bit about World War I, and finally he had a son who was in serving in France, and it was years. But the activity, what he comes to, he was a pacifist, but he comes to a conclusion that we to actively engage in the making of peace, and I think it's remarkable the work that you're doing. It was also remarkable the essay that he began speaking and talking about engaging in World War I during about 1914, and it wasn't until nearly 4 years later that the church officially got behind his message. But anyway, so thank you for your work. I just wanted to mention that this performance we recorded in the upper hall of the Kirtland Temple, specifically with the permission of Loch Mackay, which I really want to acknowledge. And I feel like it is in the temple that Talmage writes about peace, and the temple that we made this music, and it is we are bound together through generations by the work that is done in the temple. And I'll leave it there.
All right, thanks, Sandy.
So make sure they can hear, they were still saying. Can't necessarily hear you, so I just want to make sure they'll be able to hear this.
That was lovely, Andy. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
Thank you. I'll put a link to the tune if you couldn't hear it. I'll put a link in the chat. Thanks so much.
Let me just,
Can we just?
yeah, clap, yeah. This is how long, O Lord, most holy and true, shall shadowed hope our joy delay? Our hearts confess, our souls believe, thy truth, thy light, thy way, thy way, thy will, thy way. Thy truth has made our prison bright. Thy light has dimmed the dying past. We bend beneath thy loving will and seek thy onward path at last. Eternal Father, gentle Judge, speed on the day, redemption's hour. Set up thy kingdom from thy house. Unlock for us the prison tower. From grim confusion's awful depth, the wail of hosts, faith's urgent plea. Release our anguished, weary souls. Swing wide the gates and set us free. So I've asked a new and now dear friend, Ron Barnes, to offer a prayer of his choice, a blessing of his choice. He serves as the co-chair for the Commission on Peace and Justice for the Episcopal Diocese of Utah. He works on issues of creation care, environmental stewardship, and racial healing. He is also on the vestry or board of the Cathedral Church of St. Mark. I am very grateful that Ron has been willing to do this. I only met him a little over a week ago, so.
We're always already related.
Thank you.
That's scriptural. Always already.
Always already.
Yeah.
Speak loud. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? Thank you, Jay. I want to start with Fos Hilaron, which comes from the Eastern Orthodox part of Christianity, from the late 3rd and early 4th century. O gracious light, pure brightness of the ever-living Father in heaven, O Jesus Christ, holy and blessed. Now as we come to the setting of the sun and our eyes behold the vesper light, we sing your praises, O God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. You are worthy at all times to be praised by happy voices, O Son of God, O Giver of life, and to be glorified through all the worlds. And then I have 2 short prayers. The first, this is from the Book of Common Prayer, and this one is for peace. Eternal God, let us pray. Eternal God, in whose perfect kingdom no sword is drawn, but the sword of righteousness, no strength is known, but the strength of love. So mightily spread abroad your spirit, that all peoples may be gathered under the banner of the Prince of Peace, as children of one Father, to whom we be dominion and glory now and forever. Amen. And then this last prayer is for those who suffer for the sake of conscience. O God, our Father, whose Son forgave his enemies while he was suffering shame and death, strengthen those who suffer for the sake of conscience. When they are accused, save them from speaking of hate. When they are rejected, save them from bitterness. When they are imprisoned, save them from despair. And to us, your servants, give grace to respect their witness and to discern the truth, that our society and the society in Ukraine be cleansed and strengthened. This we ask for the sake of Jesus Christ, our merciful and righteous judge. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ron. And again, thank you, all of you, for being here. Sorry, I've been kind of focused on trying to talk to the audience on the screen, but I very much appreciate all of you present here. It takes a little extra effort and means a lot to me to see you and be in your presence. And some of you I haven't seen for a while, like Lynn. Lynn, it's so nice to see you. It's been a while. And so these, introduce your parents. This is something I didn't know that.
My
Oh.
parents are here, Kimberly and Paul Crookston. Some of you may know them. They've been to these things. I've been to a thing
Yeah,
here. It was great.
yeah.
Awesome.
I did not put that together for some reason when Fiona said, I want Ian to come and present, so.
I guess I should also introduce my sister here.
Yeah, let's.
I'll see
Typical
myself back.
brother, sister, stuff. Forget the sister, yeah.
I really do.
All right, we're gonna begin with Fiona and Ian. So I'm gonna turn the time over to them. Thank you.
I'm just gonna, set a timer here so I don't go forever. But thank you everyone for being here today. We really are grateful for you all coming. Please let me know if we need to speak louder. Audience far away, thank you everyone. I am the assistant director of the ForPEACE Ukraine Relief Project, which has been operating in Ukraine since before the 2022 war. The war has been going on in Ukraine since 2014. But our 100% efforts in Ukraine began with the full-scale invasion in late February of last year. So we're coming up on 1 year. And Fiona got involved a little bit earlier than I did. So I joined in, I believe, June, and you joined our board in May or April. And yeah, so we're a registered 501c3 nonprofit. We're registered here in Utah, but also, legal internationally in Ukraine. And another Utah-based NGO, a really wonderful NGO called Lifting Hands International, pays our living wages. So that means that we can say with, complete confidence that when you give us $20, $20 goes exactly straight to somebody in need in Ukraine. Probably not in the format of $20, but I don't know if there's anything you want to introduce.
I'd love to. I'm delighted. I'm honored to be here with Ian. I'm very much looking forward to what he has to tell us. I felt strongly on the invasion of Ukraine. It was one of those things that hit me with a very, very deep grief. It was completely unexpected, not the invasion, the grief. And I just felt a very strong feeling that I needed to get involved. I wasn't sure what to do. I do not speak Ukrainian. And as far as I know, I have no connections with Ukraine at all, except for that one, get involved. And I happened to meet Britta, who is the director of Ukraine. She was a very good friend of a young friend of ours, who's like the only convert to our religious tradition at the University of Richmond. And my husband was a professor there. So, there are all of these coincidences that really shouldn't have melded. But she was in the MTC, my friend Erin, at the same time Britta was. Erin was going to Russia, Britta was going to Ukraine. And then when they got back, well, what were the missions, but after the invasion, Erin contacted Britta and said, I have a book group, we'd like to help, what can we do? And that book group provided Mariupol with wheat for the entire duration until they could no longer function in Mariupol. So it was extraordinary. And it's like, okay, so out of small things, it's like, okay, this is a small organization, but I felt very good about becoming a member of it, and also very strongly that I needed to go to Ukraine myself. So I went to Ukraine with Britta and Britta's mother Margaret, who started ForPEACE in, was it Cambodia?
Cambodia, yep.
Khmer Rouge, re-establishing communities, extraordinary human being. And it was an epiphany. I really cannot say anything else. The people we met, they're just beautiful people, the people we met, Ukrainians, and it's important that we were on the front lines. So we went down in the main city, there's Kryvyi Rih, I say that correctly.
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm always trying to imitate him because he's got that going. And everybody there speaks Russian.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that was brought very clearly home to me, is that we speak Russian, but we are Ukrainian, and this is our land. So anyway,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, and I think Fiona's point about the book club, I think gets to the point of ForPEACE, which is that you know, I'm a subject expert, so I'm not a professional humanitarian. Neither is Britta. I mean, her mother is, but you know, Britta and I met in a graduate program focused specifically on Russia, Eastern Europe, Central Asia. And you know, that's where I got to know Britta. And then when we finished that program, Britta went on to help. You know, she's in the flagship program in Ukraine's most prestigious university, their anti-corruption program. And so we fill a very specific gap for humanitarian needs in Ukraine. There's, you know, the Red Cross, there's the UN. These are huge organizations that command a lot more power and resources than we do, but they're also very large and they don't have operational footprints in Ukraine. That's fortunately about a year in, we're finally seeing the UN and the Red Cross on the front lines, but it took them a very long time to get there. And it wasn't without, you know, a Herculean effort. They're wonderful organizations. But what we always strive to do is to fill that gap where, you know, humanitarian aid is needed in some capacity, it's being provided, but perhaps it's not getting all the way there. It's not getting to the people who really need it. So I'll get a little bit more into detail about that. I'm going to start with a downer, though, which is to really sort of establish the stakes of this conflict, which is unlike any other conflict we have seen, I would argue, in the last 80 years. So this is a video that my partner helped make with a Ukrainian NGO. So the English is a little stilted because they translated it.
On May 20th, Russia completely occupied the city of Mariupol. The last defenders of Mariupol left Azovstal. To achieve the occupation, Russia has made Mariupol an absolute hell on earth. According to the latest data, 100 to 150,000 people remain in the city. Unfortunately, they are surviving rather than living. The situation with water and food in the city is dire. People have to wait for hours to collect water. There are not enough food supplies in the city, so the prices are very high. Some people have to catch birds and small animals just to eat something.
Animal traps.
But cooking is tough as well. Almost all communications in the city do not work. So people prepare food right in the streets. Because of this, many people get food poisoning and infections. Those who remained in Mariupol cannot receive proper medical care. You can buy paracetamol or a Band-Aid in some pharmacies. That's all. Only occupying soldiers deserve normal conditions in hospitals, while civilians are placed in the corridors and, due to lack of staff, are practically left alone. This is the reason for the extremely high mortality rate. In Mariupol, every fourth person who needs medical help dies. Due to the occupation, going to the Ukrainian-controlled territory is almost impossible. Therefore, Mariupol residents are forced to leave for Russia. For people to do this, they need to get through filtration camps. Also, these camps are where unreliable Mariupol residents are checked. People are being interrogated, strip searched, All personal data is collected. They threaten civilians. Some people are sent to a corrective colony after being filtered, and their families are not informed about this. People do not know where their loved ones are and cannot help them in any way. Russian soldiers do not allow people to bury their relatives. The dead are being buried in mass graves or cremated. Some eyewitnesses say that nobody tries to retrieve the dead bodies from under bombed-out buildings. Excavators dispose of the bodies of people together with the debris. Russia has almost destroyed Mariupol, but even after the occupation of the city, it continues its terror there. It ruptures communications, the internet, and pumps up the population with propaganda. The city is a humanitarian disaster. Mariupol still needs immediate help.
So,
How long ago was that?
this is a great point, Jay. Thank you. So this would be about summertime. Sorry, I'm a huge crybaby, so I'm gonna cry through this whole thing. The situation is much worse now, unfortunately. The book club from, I think it's like Kaysville or something, right? Some beautiful little Utah suburb. 15 to 20 people, right, together raised tens of thousands of dollars, and we were able to get connected with a bakery, a big bakery in Mariupol, and we were able to basically keep funding their efforts, and they were able to continue making bread until the Ukrainian military evacuated. And in fact, local government and other organizations, they saw that model and they started using it elsewhere. Now, the reason I brag about that is because we didn't come up with that, Ukrainians did. And we just got connected with the right people. And that's a really big part of our mission, right? Is that we strive as subject experts, as people who have lived in the region. I think I failed to mention, I served my mission in Russia. So we command the language, the culture. We're able to, Britta is an anti-corruption expert. So we're able to find people like these people. I'm actually, well, I can play this down. What they're saying doesn't matter. I just want you to see these lovely people. So this is Svetlana and this is Vova.
Hello, dear Benjamin. Happy birthday to you.
And
Дякуємо та вітаємо з днем народження. Слава Україні!
Дякуємо за підтримку.
so they're thanking a little boy Benjamin who he instead of getting presents, so he's German. He was in Ukraine. His parents were consuls, and they had to leave. So for his birthday, he raised money, which kind of makes me sad, honestly. That this little boy, felt like that was his responsibility, but also he was able to do a lot of good, such as the money he got us, he helps raise to get things like drones so Vova here, he's a drone operator. And this is a video he took. He put this music to it as well. So these are people walking between the front lines. So these are people trying to leave the Russian occupied zone, and they have to walk several miles, sometimes like 25 miles, to get to the other side. And the Russian military will actively shoot at these people, try to harm them. So these are the people that ForPEACE is generally focused on. It's the people who are either trapped in the war zone or are trying to get out of it, have just gotten out of it, and need resources. They need help. This is also a reminder, as I mentioned, that this war has been going on for a very long time. I think Fiona can talk better about this, but this is a cemetery that they visited.
Yes, so the military person, his name is Kolya, and this is Britta walking next to him, and he took us to the cemetery where most of his friends are buried. in that 2014 conflict. We're going to come back to Collier again because he's a volunteer, but he's again signed up, and we will discuss him later. But here are the tombs, the Ukrainian flags. Again, this is just outside of Kryvyi. This is all Russian speaking. And what struck me is that this is the first place that Collier took us on our way to the front lines, is to pay homage to these soldiers who were killed and he was accompanied by 3 other soldiers, and the depth of feeling that the loss was palpable all of these years later. And you can actually tell by the way Collier is walking that this was a very painful experience. It was actually a very important experience for us before we went down to the front lines.
Can you orient me as to where that is on the map?
Yes.
Yes, Ian is
So
going
is
to
it, where's it from, Mariupol or
Yeah,
Kyiv,
that's a great question.
or the Russian border or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
So this is not all of Ukraine, this is most of Ukraine. So Crimea is down here.
Yeah.
Poland's up here.
Yeah,
Romania, Moldova, we all know our Central European directory, right?
yeah.
This is the occupied territories here. Currently, this is confusing. I don't know who made this map. It's the best one I can find. Light blue, these are oceans, but this is reconquered territory. So Kryvyi, or as you know, as they say, they're all Russian speakers. It's Kryvyi Rog, but it means crooked horn, and it's the longest city in Europe. So that's here. Mariupol is here. Another big city you might have heard of is Kherson. That's over here in the
And
south.
Odessa.
Or yeah, Odessa over here. Kharkiv up there, you may have heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
And then Donetsk, Bakhmut, Soledar, those have been in the news a lot lately.
Where is this place where the cemetery is?
That would be here.
Right there, okay.
Mhm.
And even though it's Russian speaking, they're allied with Ukraine.
Yeah.
Ukraine.
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah.
and this is a great point. Thank you, Fiona. So what the Russian government has done, what the Kremlin has done, is they have taken a language and made it a weapon, right?
Mm.
They have declared that all Russian speakers, anyone who is ethnically Russian as well, is sort of I don't know, a citizen, or that the Russian state has a responsibility to protect those people. And they have sort of contrived a conflict in the East around language. But as Fiona has endeavored to point out, there's a very strong reaction to that. People now are very excited to learn Ukrainian in many ways, but a lot of other people are also just rejecting the notion that, you know, a state can sort of claim property over something like a language, I suppose.
Ian,
Yeah.
so, and maybe for me or for them, explain why a lot of these Ukrainians speak Russian,
Mhm.
USSR,
Right. Thank you.
Repeat the question.
Yeah,
Maybe each time
so,
the question
yeah, thank you. We had a question is, why are all these Ukrainians speaking Russian? And that is a long history of imperialism, right? And there's a great deal of racism and condescension from the Russian state toward Ukrainians. Ukrainian is seen as a peasant language to them, as uncultured, uncouth, but none of this is really grounded in actual history. It's more politics. And this part of Ukraine, which is a huge problem for Russia now, was probably, I would argue, like the heart of the Soviet Union. So the heart of the Soviet Union was not in Russia, right? It was in this land that is in Ukraine. And you probably noticed when you were all young, you would say the Ukraine. And now people, especially Ukrainians, will correct you. It's Ukraine. And that has long history, it has a long history in that imperialism, where we're translating into English what is in Russian a very like a grammatical rejection of statehood. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it like in Russian, when you say you're in a country, you use a different article. But if you're in just like a geographic place, it's different. Anyway, so all the industry was there, mining. So there was also a lot of colonization. So Russians, actual, Russian-speaking Russians moving in and becoming the neighbors of the Ukrainians. And through much of this history, this has not been a problem. Through much of this history, it has been a problem. It kind of ebbs and flows. But Kolya would have taken Fiona to this cemetery, regardless if there was a war going on, because fear of the Russian state, again, not necessarily Russians, although Russophobia has unfortunately gone up since the conflict, but fear of the Russian state is central, I would say, to the sort of Ukrainian psyche. Especially, there was a famine in 1930s, 32, 33. It's called the Holodomor, which means death by hunger. And anywhere between 5 to 10 million people were starved to death. And they were mostly Ukrainian. And it was because they were resisting collectivization, forced industrialization, collectivization of agriculture.
By Joseph Stalin.
By Stalin, yes.
Which means having your land stolen.
Yes, yes. And so, they fought back, they resisted, and so they closed all the borders and they just let everyone starve. So, you talk to a Ukrainian my age who's never, who didn't live through that, but there's generational trauma for sure, especially around food. Ukrainians can often be really, it seems like, weird about food, but it's because they're worried about, that's not my computer. They're worried about. Anyway, this was meant to impress you with like numbers and stuff, but I think I have you by now. So, but these numbers, they kind of seem small, but then when I explain them, it makes a lot more sense. So these aren't just any 5 hospitals. These are 5 hospitals that Britta and I and Ukrainians like Katya and Stas have found that are they're not just on the front lines, but they're the hospitals best equipped to receive patients. They are receiving the most patients, and they're in need of resources.
It's where this town and where the star is on the map.
Yeah, well, so, and I'll show you kind of where there's a few, but one of them is in that star area. These are kind of old numbers too. It's about 4 or 5 months old now, but this is much closer to 400 people evacuated. And this is people evacuated out of like bullets are flying, bombs are dropping, and like combat medics are dragging these people out. We completely outfit 4 different evacuation teams with all the equipment they need to go save civilians and soldiers who have been wounded.
And that includes bulletproof vests and everything.
Yeah, so over 1,000 now full. It's we provide non-lethal gear to primarily volunteer defenders, so not professional soldiers, but people like you and me that might choose to stay and defend your home and your family. And they're all very, very poor. So somebody volunteers for the Ukrainian military, and then they don't have boots, they don't have armor, all they have is a gun, right? So families, communities, they have to raise all of this money for all this gear to purchase their children, their husbands, their daughters, the gear to protect them as a soldier.
And that's Britta, right?
Oh yes, this is British. She's very tiny. So this was just I just died. Like Boba's like 7 feet tall.
Wow,
and,
that's a great photo.
Well, also this is like 40 pounds. Like she could barely hold this vest. You can imagine. We get them the absolute best vest we can, 3+4 armor quality. They're ceramic cermet plates, so they're very light. But that's still incredibly heavy. And, a lot of Ukrainians are actually British size. And if they were had to use like their own armor, the Ukrainian army issues them, it's like upwards of 50-60 pounds. It's just unusable. And then also a lot of sort of food and water deliveries. This is a hugely important thing we do. These water filters, we're pushing now 400, and I'll get more into these. This is a really important program that we have running. So here's just an example. This was, I believe this was the makeshift evacuation shelter that Fiona stopped by. And this is a refugee center for orphans. So either children who are already orphans or children who have been orphaned because of this war. And because we're able to work with, this is Vika. She's absolutely wonderful. She's one of our employees in Ukraine. Or more like a partner, but we pay her for what she does. So she's able to get fresh local produce and things like that, that's a big deal, to get fresh food in a situation like this. And then we also have some impressive endorsements. My favorite one is Elizabeth Cullen Dunn. So she's an expert. Her job is to track humanitarian organizations and how responsible, and effective they are. And after 8 months of conflict, she was asked on Twitter, which big organization, people should donate to. She said, don't donate to tiny organizations like ours. So that just made me feel good. But yeah, how do you get all the way down to Kryvyi Rih? Most of the travel in Ukraine goes by train. So I wasn't on Fiona's trip. Fiona went in May, right? And so you want to tell us a little bit about where is this? What?
Come in so they can see you.
Yeah. Come over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Przemysl. It's the last town in Poland before crossing the border into Ukraine. This is shortly after the invasion. This is the only train leaving to Ukraine. The queue goes on forever. People coming back into Ukraine. And a number of them were older women. And there were teenagers who were walking among the Ukrainians returning home with platters of food and drink. And I have to tell you, the grandmas were spoiled. Those babushka, they were, they were nurtured, and but they were, I do not deter me from my resolve. I am going home. And so this couple are also Ukrainian. Margaret Albana is just brilliant at finding people. And
This is the founder of
yeah, this is the founder of ForPEACE, and she was with us. And this is all of the extra luggage. So we were accompanying a truck full of 27 tons of food and medical equipment and protection gear for soldiers. So we'd seen that off as it left the border for Ukraine, and now we were following it. And of course, people at the last minute are giving us things. Oh, can you take this? Can you take this? And so we were staggering under all of this luggage to get onto the train and head down. But this was like the very beginning of our journey, and Britta hasn't joined us yet. We're going to pick her up. Where do we pick her up?
I don't know. Where do we always pick her up?
I don't know. We
Probably
picked her up.
Kyiv. Yeah.
And then it wasn't Kyiv actually, because we went to Kyiv. It was on the way to Kyiv. Anyway,
Are you going by train or by truck?
we are going by train.
But
the truck is-
the supplies are going by truck.
Yeah, the supplies are going by truck. And I have to say there was a little kerfuffle at the border because a lovely dozy driver had lost one of the important sheets of paper. You just can't drive over into Ukraine. You have to have the right papers. I was given responsibility of ensuring those papers were in order. I don't speak Russian. I don't read Russian. I don't speak Ukrainian. I don't read Ukrainian. I can count, kind of, sort of. I knew there were 12, and I got them in order, and then I kept following the numbers all the way down. And you can imagine when they say, "I'm so sorry, we've lost a paper. We don't have a paper," and it's like, "No, Fiona, you are completely stupid." Anyway, we don't know what he was smoking, but he eventually found the paper, and so the truck got over the border, huge relief. But we're essentially following parallel, because that's a lot of the problems is a lot of the trucks with relief don't get over the borders. And so the border between Poland and Ukraine is littered with trucks who are just stuck.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Yeah.
abandoned, and so it's good to keep your eyes on that price as it's making its way through Ukraine.
When was this photo taken? July,
No, it was May,
May?
beginning of May.
Maybe you said that, sorry.
No, that's okay. So anyway, yes,
Add some clarity to a thing. You said
Yeah.
people are giving you things.
yeah,
Delineate between the casual family who says, I need to get this to a cousin versus one of those other small, medium or large NGOs.
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there communication between NGOs and
Yeah.
says, hey, I've got one extra pallet, you got space, I got space in my truck, you know?
It's because of like the smaller NGOs like us, and especially local Ukrainian NGOs will, you know, they will help move the aid of the much larger. We could jump
You know,
forward.
don't lose sight of that picture of Fiona.
No, I won't.
Because I'm curious what you meant when you said people are giving you stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
so-
so
Yeah.
So this is the problem. One, we're trying to avoid, and two, trying to fix, right? So these are aid dumps. So this is like the nightmare of every donor, right? That you give somebody your money and then it ends up in a big pile somewhere. So why would I show that to you? Well, it's because, yes, we work with local NGOs, other sort of, and when we say small, we just mean, you know, we have, you know, about 5 or 6 people who run this NGO. And so we're focused more on the last mile logistics, and we work with local Ukrainians. It's not just that they're local, we work with a specific class of Ukrainians, right? We work mainly with blue collar Ukrainians who are logistics experts by nature. They're used to moving stuff across Ukraine, across Europe. And so they know how to do this.
Wow.
And they need work, right? So if you pay them a going rate, and instead of moving a bunch of new cars to Kryvyi, you can move a bunch of water, or don't move water though, you can do filters, I'll show you later, but food, right? Or, you know, protective gear, things like that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Did you get just individuals, you know, to borrow a metaphor, the First Ward Relief Society president?
Mhm.
It's all, yeah.
Metaphorically speaking,
Mhm.
hey, this is from my local church.
There's a lot of
It's all
that.
I can carry in the trunk of my car. Can you help me get it across?
Right.
Yes, so there is, we'll come back to all that stuff, don't worry.
Yeah, but just to go back, so we were in Warsaw, that's where we started. So people from Warsaw, Ukrainians in Warsaw, in fact, we had a couple of, like 4 guys, 2 in the refugee center in Warsaw, and another couple of Ukrainian young men to help us get all of the stuff. So we had 27 tons of food, which was actually donated by the church. And then everything else was gathered, particularly the body armor. We call him the man on the ground. His name's Stas. He is Ukrainian. They immigrated to Chicago when he was 8. He served in the US military, and then he came over as an advisor. And so he was responsible. The Chicagoans were actually responsible. Ukrainian Chicagoans were responsible for collecting all of the money for him to buy the body protection gear. Was actually the best and the cheapest was in China. So this is the other thing, is working with individual people. So you're not, the funds are really important. And I think, I don't know if you can make the analogy with tithing, but anyway, that we consider them sacred, and they have come from people who really want to help Ukrainians in a really difficult time. So our responsibility is to ensure that all of that money is accounted for. And so that's why we keep such a close eye on the shipments. Now, all of the stuff which I'm talking about, it was just from Ukrainians in Warsaw who had heard that we were leaving. And like 3 or 4 days before, Britta was already in Ukraine, we were going to join her. So they left all of their stuff outside the apartment, but the truck was already loaded and on the way. So this is the night we left. We drove to Przemysl and then got on board. So we are carrying everything. Everybody said, oh, you're going to Ukraine. let me, please take this for me and this for me, not necessarily to families. I don't know that there were specific families to which the food, or at least our shipment was sent, but for Ukraine, the Ukrainians again finding out, okay, we want to help our brothers and sisters in Ukraine.
It sounds like you need a flexible itinerary.
Oh, yeah.
You have a master plan, you're
Yeah.
there, but
Yes.
if
Just
not
move
daily,
and-
perhaps even hourly, you've got adjustments to
Absolutely.
the schedule.
Yeah.
There's also just like this cultural thing of like, it's hard to nail a Ukrainian down for a time for anything. So you just kind of have to always, but I think
Well,
a
plus
great,
the wartime component. It's just
yes,
it's kind of a controlled chaos.
yeah, I think that, yeah.
You've got to be very
control chaos.
loosey-goosey, control, yeah, you just got to, okay, they need this, we need to do this, and so, you know, it's just an incredible management disaster, which I could not handle, which is why we have Ian, because this mastermind is really good at saying, okay, this needs to go here, this needs to go here, we need to get, but you're right, mostly it's Ukrainians living in Warsaw, and that's how it started.
I think a great analogy would, it's like, the organization is coming from, it's self-organizing, organizing from the bottom up. So it would be like, we're working with like the local ward. So there might be like a ward and a bishop and a relief society. And sometimes we actually do work with, you know, those Ukrainian Mormons, but there's also just, yeah, there's just getting in touch with a young woman. I'll show you Katya here in a minute, who just has an amazing network of amazing people who are just ready to help. Just normal people like you and me, very truly just.
Okay, I sat down too early. So on the train ride, we met 3 really incredible women. One had just come from rescuing her mother from Kharkiv, and she was in tears. It's like, you know, we were women among women. It's like, why are you in Ukraine? What are you doing? I mean, it was just so beautiful. This woman, Yulia, is an accomplished violinist. So we're talking about the beginning of May. Her nephew had already been captured by the Russians. The family was praying that he would survive the torture, that he would emerge from that camp alive. And so she is on her way. She is taking her violin and she will travel Europe, raising money for gear for soldiers, protection gear for soldiers. But I mean, her face, the faces said everything in Ukraine, and the great tragedy in her face. And again, it was, thank you for coming, thank you for helping. And then there was this other beautiful woman, and she was being seen off by her son, and he was sending her, she'd had a stroke, so he was sending her to Warsaw, and his sister was picking her up, driving from Amsterdam to pick her up. But it was we don't have the picture here, probably should have put it on there, but he can't go with her. He's a man, he's not allowed to travel outside of Ukraine. So she has to put her on the train. But we were there, and she ended up slipping into diabetic coma. I mean, the drama involved in this Ukrainian trip. But Britta was there, she was speaking, okay, read the medicine, call the son, and it all worked out well. But it taught us a lesson. So whenever you're among Ukrainians, when they offer you food, do not refuse it, because they will not eat it themselves either. So that is what we learned on this trip. But just every day,
If you eat, they eat.
Yes.
I see. If you eat, they eat.
Exactly.
I see.
Okay. Yes, exactly. So now you know.
Well said.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of the general route, you know, so she's coming in from Poland there. And so another reason why she mentioned, you know, there's a lot of complicated logistics and getting, you know, mittens here and water there and, you know, stuff like that. So the important thing about Kryvyi Rih is it's an infrastructural hub. So from here, there's these, you know, large main highways. Yeah.
President Zelensky was born there.
Oh, yes.
Raised.
President Zelensky. Become
Russian speaking.
yeah, well, yeah.
He's from the Star place.
Yeah, he's from Kryvyi Rih.
Okay.
I'll take you to his home if you come with me.
Yeah.
Sure, I'd love to.
Several Russian premiers, or I should say, USSR premiers actually were raised in Ukraine as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Khrushchev and Gorbachev and Russia.
Yeah, Yeah, it's a complicated issue, you know, we think of Stalin, you know, he's a Georgian, right? He's not Russian. So this is, it's hard to demonstrate. I'm just trying to show you kind of, I'll turn this down. But I'm trying to show the destruction you sort of encounter. I don't know how well people can see the rightmost video here. But that tank has its turret popped off, which is just an interesting aside, which is that
Boys speaking.
this is where my boys. I don't know, Ukraine's got some pretty cool ladies fighting too, so. But yeah, so the turret's been popped off. There's a fatal flaw in these Russian tanks. If you hit them in the right spot, it detonates all the ammunition underneath the turret, and it pops the turret straight up. And they'll have like competitions. It's really grim, but you know, like I've seen videos literally 75 feet in the air. This, you know, it's several tons of pure metal. It's just, I don't know. It just, the scale of the war from like a tank to the big, you know, the entire army. It's really hard to comprehend. The amount of destruction. You know, wars happen all over the world all the time, but this is you know, I think, you know, we can set the Balkans aside and argue about that later, but this is, I would say, the first industrial scale war in Europe since World War II of this scale. The amount of ammunition, of artillery, people dying is on a scale we have not, again, seen in 80 years.
Hey, Ian,
Yeah.
talk about having served a mission for the LDS Church
Uh-huh.
in Russia. Probably good to love those people.
Yeah.
So how do you know, it's easy for us to go goodbye, bad guy.
Right.
I mean, Putin accepted. He's a bad
Right.
guy. But
Yeah.
the people themselves, how do you talk about that?
Thank you, Jay. That is a really hard question. I mentioned it's been really hard for me to see just the Russophobia, you know, amongst my friends, amongst Ukrainians, amongst people on the internet. It's also been really hard for the church in Russia. I mean, it's
The,
you know,
the Latter-day Saint Church?
yeah, sorry, the Mormon church in Russia. So a lot of the people I know, you know, support the war on the Russian side. A lot of people I know don't. And, you know, now those neighbors in Russia are having a really tough time. I think also, you know, for example, Russia still, it organizes its brigades according to area. Okay, so if you're all from a town, you're all in the same brigade. Can we see why this might be a problem? So like in World War I, you know, if you're driving up the backside of east side of Yellowstone up through St. Anthony in Idaho, there's like a big memorial in St. Anthony of, you know, all the boys in St. Anthony that died on the same day in World War I somewhere in Europe. So this still happens in Russia. So I served in Samara, and the Samara brigade has been horribly unlucky. There was a massive attack down here on New Year's Eve, 1201, New Year's Eve. The Ukrainians sent some HIMARS rockets to a place where a bunch of soldiers were housed, and anywhere from 300 to 500 were killed. It's absolutely insane. And they're all from the city I served my mission in.
So where is that? In
Samara, that would be over here. So
Like
It's-
directly east of
Mhm.
Moscow by like 6 hours by train or something.
yeah, southeast, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a question that's from Jay's question, if you're willing to take the conversation this
Yeah.
way. I'm trying to understand the tortured logic, at least from my view, of the Russian army invading as they're invading territory to liberate their own people.
Yes.
So in a matter of speaking, they're bombing an apartment building
Mhm.
and they're telling the people who are just displaced, we're here to free you
Yes.
and make you part of us like you always wanted to be,
Mhm.
okay? as if they're forcing upon them the desire to be part of the country
Yeah.
that just blasted their apartments
Mm-hmm.
and homes. And so on. And so the average citizen can see through the logic, can't he? See that?
I think a lot of them can. So the question, the comment was, what's the tortured logic between invading a country to free the people there, and in doing so, you have to harm a lot of them. You have to destroy their homes, their towns. I think, there's the unfortunate reality of war is that the Ukrainian military also has to conquer back places. So the difference between the two militaries is the Ukrainian military, one, is much better trained. It's also the defending army. They're defending their own people. They're not out there, raping and pillaging and murdering. But they're both effectively the same army in terms of heritage, same tactics, same way of thinking, which means a huge problem, a huge criticism both sides have had is that they hang out in the cities. So often, Ukrainians will encounter this same issue of you liberate an area, but, first, these people have been under direct fire of Russians for 8 months, and then they're under direct fire of Ukrainians taking it back. I think, and so I'm saying, I don't have an answer for you other than what I have seen, which is despite the bloodiness and the confusion of war, when a Ukrainian military comes through and liberates a town, people come out in droves to thank them.
We'll see that.
And yeah, I'll show you.
Those are still alive.
Yes.
Yeah. But,
Yes.
but also, I don't think we understand how important propaganda is and what a weapon that is in Russia. So, for example, I swim at the. Oh, I'm so sorry.
to stand on a chair.
Yeah, just
One of those chairs.
All right, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Let's see. So I swim with a Russian couple at the local aquatic center, and their mom has emigrated from Russia. This is Heba. And she gets angry when she sees the news. And this is all lies. We are there to kill the Nazis. This is why we are there. This is all lies. The Americans are on the side of the Nazis. And she really believes that propaganda is so powerful. And she's not a stupid woman. But if that is the only story you hear all your life, then that is the only story you know. And so this is a real problem in Russia, because they really do believe that Russia is fighting this almighty evil. And she does. So there's been all sorts of explosions. I'm surprised that any of them are still alive in that house. But because, that her son and her daughter-in-law are absolutely in favor of you liberating Ukraine, and then the mother is saying, no, this is all lies. You were listening to lies. I'm supposed to say it.
I think also an incredibly important thing that I have learned is the fog of war is thick, very thick. So people on the front lines rarely know what they're shooting at. You're rarely shooting at things. You're usually just hiding from artillery. The same goes, I would say, tenfold for civilians. When a town is being fought over, it is very unclear who's doing what to whom. And it's often just whoever moves in and establishes the first narrative is what people are going to, at least at first, identify as truth. So I think, that's another really difficult thing. This is just a checkpoint to show, these are all across Ukraine. And another point here is to say that at every one of these checkpoints, not everyone, but at very many of them, the soldiers are begging for money. Because again, this is such a grassroots effort.
Those are Ukrainian soldiers.
These are Ukrainian soldiers, And
And
they're
begging
doing their
not to
job.
ban.
No, yeah, they're not begging
They're
and
begging.
yeah, so they'll have people call them kittens. They're our kittens is like the nickname for the kittens, take care of the kittens. And so they'll often have like a little bucket that says, you know, food for the kittens or whatever. And because a lot of these guys, the rations that they're supposed to feed their unit on for a month would feed like a large family for a week. So they have to supplement everything with their own fundraising, their own fund.
It's a legit checkpoint.
It's
Then
legitimate,
then
yes.
it's also collecting contributions. Will they deny you passage if you don't
Absolutely not, no.
contribute
yeah.
to the kittens?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
I think there's a lot of did you call it Russophobia?
yeah, fear of Russia, yeah.
Well, because of the cruelty, we
Yes.
hear about it and we think, how do they teach their young men to be so cruel? Is that part of their training? To go in and attack children and women and
Yeah, I will. So the question is, you know, part of the Russophobia, fear of Russia is, as you know, as you learn about the actions of the Russian military, you know, the question is, how do you train somebody to be so vicious?
is that, I mean, did you
Yeah.
see that in the Russian people that you knew that there was,
No,
did you ever
I would
imagine
say,
they could do that?
I would say, you know, maybe the answer is that I think anyone is capable of what the Russian military does, unfortunately. I think the Ukrainian military is. The difference is that there's a leadership structure that's important, right? I mean, there's the component of protecting your own land, I think that is probably the biggest thing. Why would you harm or destroy something you're there to protect? But there's also for the Russian military, it's a distinct tactic. So tactically, it's called без предел, which means without limits. Okay, so in the United States, we have COIN, so counterinsurgency doctrine, which was started in Vietnam, and it goes into like General Petraeus in the Iraq, Afghanistan era, and that is, you know, the COIN doctrine is soldiers are there, they build schools, they
Can't see, we can't see on the
Okay.
screen.
They build schools, you know, they sort of get involved in building up the society and providing something better than the alternative of the enemy they're fighting. So the Russian military's strategy for counterinsurgency was developed in Chechnya and in Syria. And you're going to brutalize and terrorize the population into subjugation. So I also think that a lot of the atrocities that are being committed because if they don't commit it, they will be killed or they will be harmed. There's a lot of Russian convicts and recruits that are sent in as cannon fodder. And if they turn back, professional Russian soldiers are there to kill them or to torture them, make a video of it and put it on the internet to scare everybody. So I think that's a huge aspect is that, you know, and then this gets into like, you know, Hitler and Stalin and how could Germans do this and that. And I think a lot of it is signaling from the top. Often people are looking for permission to do things. I saw, let's go over here.
I just reminded of a friend who since passed on was in Vietnam, but he studied a battle in which this town was occupied briefly by the Vietnam, North Vietnamese army, and then was recaptured by the US, and he said it was put down officially as an American victory because they captured the town, but they said while the town was under Vietcong or North Vietnamese control, they terrorized the population, especially the leadership, and just let people, the message they were saying to them, if you depend on the Americans are undependable allies, we are the only ones who can protect you. If you support them, we will get you. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing that probably happened in Iraq.
Yes.
With collaborators there. So it's a complicated issue, but I mean, I think it's satanic, but this is what people do.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Can you validate or debunk the hearsay that I'm gonna share? It's called blooding your soldiers. So a commanding Russian officer en route to his destination city to make sure his foot soldiers under his command are ready. They happen upon a village that's just along the path. And the commanding officer commands his soldiers to kill everybody. Not strategic, but it's an effort, is to put blood in the hearts and minds of the soldiers. So that the next day, when they get to their destination, they're ready, willing, and able to kill the other soldiers without hesitation,
Yeah.
to do the big job.
Like
without
the Eli
hesitation.
massacre, okay.
Yeah, so the question is there really a thing called blooding your soldiers, which is en route to your military objective, you have your soldiers massacre people to get them in a sort of fighting, bloodletting mood. I'm not aware of it in any sort of formal capacity, but I am aware of like many sort of tangential or like instances that have sort of a family likeness to that. I think the more common thing is scaring soldiers into hurting other people by demonstrating on somebody who hasn't, or showing a video of what happens if you refuse an order, which are often things honestly worse than death. So I think in 2022, as far as 23, as far as I know, that's the more common thing, but I honestly don't know.
Just a sec for questions. So, Ann and Fiona, do you have other things that you want to make sure are said as we get closer to
Yes.
9 o'clock? So let
Yeah. Please, thank you.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to-
yeah, so this is Polly again, just so you can see his front half is a lot better in his back half. So.
It's hard for me not to picture these guys in winter right now. These pictures. I mean, you're showing them in summer, but
I know.
it's gotta be so much worse.
They don't send us a lot of pictures in the winter.
But this is actually where the truck arrived. So he and his comrades are picking up food for the soldiers on the front line, and also really important urgent medical supplies that they need. And this is Collier, and we're going to see him again, and he is just he was our lead driver, taking us to the front line.
And what's the story with the puppy?
So, I mean, this is, everyone loves dogs. No one loves dogs as much as Ukrainians. Like cats and dogs, they just love these things, even like the mangy, gross ones. And, oh, hey, Joe. So, I don't know, they just adopt these dogs and carry them around or whatever. We have had problems. It's not a huge problem, but sometimes we've like given rations to soldiers, and then they'll like give their food to the stray dogs. They feel bad for them. There's actually an NGO that is like ours, but they focus on extracting animals from these areas. But yeah, they're just so. The point here is that not only is Kolya volunteering for the military, he's off duty here. He doesn't have to help get 27 tons of food to the front line, but he does of his own volition. These guys are great people to work with. These are emergency responders in the Bakhmut area. Okay, so Bakhmut gets a lot of attention, which is good, but that also means a lot of areas around Bakhmut get neglected, right? Little towns of 25 people, 100 people, whatever. But these guys know where they are, and these guys know what people need. And so, we can call Orest here, and he can give us a list that is often down to like shirt sizes and shoe sizes, right? For people, you just can't get that level of precision on bigger organizations, just like, we can't move in as much gear as they have. But here they were delivering Britta while she was here, California for Christmas. She deprived Costco of all of their thermals.
Is it Britta there?
This is Britta. Yeah, it's a great story. She was like, I want all of your thermals. And they're like, okay. And she's like, no. all of your thermals. And they, yeah, they're like, and in the back.
And she's at Stanford with you.
So we met at Harvard. She was at we kind of did that.
Okay.
So she did her undergraduate work at Stanford, he did his graduate work at Stanford, and they met in Harvard.
Another graduate program at Harvard.
Yeah, I know.
You can never have too many degrees. And then if we can't get it there with the help of emergency responders, Bert will take it. I don't. So this is about 5 blocks from the Russians. They're here. That's fun, crater. This town unfortunately has been captured by now. So she went here. She brought a little filter. That's our little water filter. It's not there. We just,
But it is there.
oh, I mean, it's not right there where we didn't give it to the Russians, but so where was I? Okay, so she went for 2 reasons. One, she'll do these, we will go and investigate a situation, because part of effective frontline humanitarian aid is making the really hard call of, is this a lost cause situation? So we found out somebody asked for a bunch of baby supplies, right? So she was like, what? So she went in to check out that situation. But along the way, she also determined, unfortunately, that this was only a matter of time.
Could you get them out, or what'd you do then?
Unfortunately, we weren't able to get those people out. Sometimes people won't leave.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, that's a complicated issue. But
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no.
She got formula into the baby.
Yeah, the baby did get a lot of supplies that the baby needed. So hope and pray.
We have how much risk.
We gotta make sure they have time.
Okay. So these are. Fiona can talk about these people a lot better.
Well, very, very quickly, because there are other things we need to get onto. So this is on our way to the front line. These are the wives of the soldiers who are accompanying us to the front line, and they are making camouflage, and they work, 12 days, 7 days, 12 hours a day to make camouflage for the soldiers on the front line. This community is completely deserted. As far as we could see, they were the only people there. What was absolutely beautiful is that they offered us lunch, and they gave us a bunch of fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, which is just extraordinary, just absolutely extraordinary. And then we needed to use the bathroom, which was a hole in the ground. So this is real poverty, and they are working to ensure that there's of course, this camouflage will not work this time of the year, because we'll stand out like a green sore thumb in the middle of all the white stuff. But then it worked very well. Yes, thank you.
This is not important. This is a bunch of stuff we've done, but I think it's apparent to you all that what we really focus on is people in a system and maintaining a system. So this is just a example of our real existing network. These are all real people with names who we know and love, and they do absolutely amazing work. And it's because of these Ukrainians. Again, some of them run NGOs, but most of them are just people like you and me. It's because people deciding to take a stand to help people in need. They're able to be absolute miracle workers. That doesn't matter. This is Katya again. So she's a Kyiv-based activist. She has a huge network, and she on her own distributes a lot of medicine to people in these forgotten areas. And she has a huge network for that. And so we were able to, this is the most important company you've never heard of. All their stuff is in all of your gadgets. And we had a very generous initial donation from them. We were able to have REI and Backcountry match, or give us a distributor price on a bunch of 10-liter Catadine filters. And so these are reusable, okay? And each cartridge, and we give these communities on the front line, we give them many cartridges, right? Because we want to give this device to them to provide fresh, clean water. and we don't want to have to worry about them not having that ever again. So we leave it with a steward of some kind. It's either a Baba who no one's going to mess with, or, you know, the block captain, maybe the village elder, and they're in charge of making sure nobody misappropriates it. And these feed a lot. I mean, these supply a lot of communities with fresh water. I'll show you here, but I just want to show you some more of these heroes. I wish I could do justice how amazing these people are. They are truly the people who put their lives on the line. And you can see here, like, we have people, you know, for accountability pictures, and, you know, she's in her bathrobe. This means we've done it right, because that means she has access to clean water in her bathrobe. But you can also see just it's almost like pride, you know, like she's so grateful. But I think, you know, a huge point I like to make is this is sort of the general countenance of Ukrainians. It's very hard to find victims, right? I mean, there's victims everywhere, but I mean in the sense that everybody is fighting for a better life, to save themselves, to save each other. And I don't know if that's particular to Ukrainians or Europeans or people in general. I don't know, but it is a beautiful thing. This is about half of the filters we have distributed. So the gray here is the occupied territories. The yellow is stuff that has been conquered back by the Ukrainian military, or liberated, I should say. And these are all color coded, right? So that one filter here, that was put here, that's right there, right? Boom. And so these are all different people's filters that they've put in place. Each cartridge, depending on the, you know, the turgidness of the water, can filter up to 1,000 liters, which I think is probably like 320 some odd gallons per cartridge, right? And we give them a lot of cartridges. So this is a family in Bakhmut earlier this summer. Unfortunately, we have lost contact with this family. And I share this again, it's a little bit of a downer, but this is Bakhmut now, okay?
Like what that says.
So this here says Yaksho des ad na zemli tomabutu. So if there's hell on earth, then it is here. Which is very sad. This was a bucolic, beautiful Ukrainian town that has been utterly destroyed. And before the war, I believe it was about 70,000 people. Maybe about a month or two ago, it's probably about 6,000 or 7,000 people. I'm entirely unsure how many people are there now. The situation is deteriorating very quick. In fact, it could be captured as we speak. That's how sort of present moment the fighting in Bakhmut is. And again, it's just absolute utter destruction. Here on the left, 1917, right? Verdun. On the right, Bakhmut, 2022. On the ground guy, Stas, he's worked with these soldiers using World War I trench manuals to help them build better trenches so they don't have water in the bottom. Again, on the left here is Bakhmut, and on the right is Verdun. Just completely indistinguishable. But it's heroes like this. This is Olga. You know, so Britta's about this tall and Olga's about that tall. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a vest that would look probably like it would like fit me, you know, well, and it's huge on her. But this woman goes in to Bakhmut. So all these blue ones here are hers. She's put all these filters here, either by herself or with the police, right? She puts her life on the line every day. So up here in Soledar, it's been completely captured by this point. But she also runs an evacuation shelter outside the city that we support. So she'll bring in, here's a bunch of potatoes we got for her. So she'll bring these to people who can't evacuate or won't, and then she'll take people out who want to evacuate. And she'll take them to her evacuation shelter. And you know, every little bit counts. We've had donations of, you know, $5 from kids, and that's enough for a clean bed of sheets for somebody for the first time in months, right? That's huge. That's absolutely huge. Let's see how much time we got.
Yeah, okay, well, we were out of time. Okay, so we visited 3 hospitals while we were there for the ice. If you will look at sandbags up to the walls, and then everything is reused. So linens that are used are washed and used again. So there is very little, there. The medical establishment needs a lot of help. This is the maternity hospital, which was in slightly better shape than this one, but we've got the 3 wheelchairs here. These are the delivery rooms here. There's glass windows. So if the need occurs, they will lift the laboring women. They cannot make it down to the basement, obviously, so they will lift them and put them in these wheelchairs here. And
But
hope
then they
that
just have to
provides
stay in
enough
the
protection.
Yeah.
Yes, or deliver their baby.
Yeah. So I'm going to end on this note, which is a big thing we do is support guys like this guy. This is Sergey. He's a combat surgeon. And he spent all of his own money to do this, by the way. So we bought him this ambulance, again, with these amazing Ukrainians. Her job normally is to buy cars in Europe. So she knew exactly where to go for an ambulance. We got this ambulance back to Kryvyi and looking like this in 2 weeks. Okay. Have you ever seen such a proud man in your life? This dude is so stoked. You know, he thought of this himself. That's some. Well, it's too
Innovative.
anyway, it's just very innovative. Trust me. And then, ladies.
Yeah.
Hey, look at that. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, and this works, right? I mean, he hides this like this. I mean, so we've bought a lot of vehicles for people. They get blown up all the time. This bad boy's still going. So, you know, there's crazy attacks like this. Kolya was an attack like this. This is white phosphorus or thermite, right? This is a war crime. They're really funny in this, but they swear a lot. So anyway. Here's an aerial view. So that's from the air. That's the Russian drone that called it in. So they'll light up an area like this, make it all start to burn, and then they can see what they can hit with concussive or thermobaric munitions. Kolya was hit by one of these, right? Our friend Kolya.
The dog.
Yeah, this is his leg after. I went back and forth between
And then
scaring
you
you,
both
and
did.
then we decided not to show you the gross pic, but this was a very, very, very serious wound. And somebody like Sergey has to go out and get it. So this is a combat medic, right? And he's going out to get somebody like Kolya.
Yeah.
This is as dangerous as it gets. And so this is an injured soldier. He's put, you know, a tourniquet on him. Now he's bandaging him up. And his job now is to get him back in that ambulance and get him down here. And this is where Sergey stabilizes his patients for delivery to an actual hospital. So he's chosen a bombed out building in the basement because it's less likely to be a target. And this is where he eats, sleeps, and works almost 24/7. And a big problem that Sergey has is he will go in and he will get soldiers, but not just, he'll get women, children, anybody who's harmed, he will get them out. And then because the Ukrainian medical establishment is overwhelmed, because they don't have access to the instruments we have to the, you know, state-of-the-art Western training, a lot of these people cannot be properly helped. If you're lucky, you may get to spend 50 to 100 grand of money you probably don't have to be life flighted to Germany or Poland. That's not a sustainable model, especially for a lot of the people who, you know, they're just never going to have that opportunity ever. The vast majority of people who are harmed in this are not going to have that opportunity. Chloe's amazing. Look, he's harmed and he's still passing out our stuff.
They have to just do a lot of amputations then.
Tons and tons of amputations. But this is the thing. Again, the Ukrainian doctors, absolute heroes. They're amazing. But there's a proper way to amputate something that allows for the later fitting of a prosthetic. Okay. And so they're amputating knowing that this person's never going to get a prosthetic. And that's bad because sometimes people do get a prosthetic and you have to go back and re-aggravate all that, open it all back up and prepare it. So this brings me to where I'll end. This gentleman here is Dr. Aragon Elvanger. This is Britta's older brother. He's a 13-year active duty U.S. Air Force combat surgeon. He has trained his whole professional life for this. He's been doing this his whole life professionally for soldiers in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Ukraine from the conflict starting earlier. We have just purchased with our first round of fundraising for this specific project about $1 million worth of medical gear for a fraction of that cost because KLS Martin is amazing and has effectively donated it. And this is a how to explain this? This is exactly designed for what Aragon is doing, which is it's a mobile trauma surgery clinic. So this is called the Cube, the government model. This was developed by the US Air Force and this German company, and it's modular. You can take it apart, you can put it in a vehicle, and you can take it to a field hospital. You can take it to another regional hospital. And what Aragon does, so here he is operating before we had the tools, right? But Aragon is here, Dr. Elvanger, I should say, is here for the long haul. And so he makes frequent trips to Ukraine. He spends, you know, upwards of weeks, months there sometimes. And he's working to not only just operate on these people who need help, but he's training all of these amazing doctors. And he's trying to get them, maybe not that super fancy government model, blah, 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 but better equipment that they can then perform similar surgeries.
Dr. Elvanger is an oral maxillofacial surgeon. So he deals primarily with wounds to the head, neck, and face. And he's shown us some pictures, and it's just extraordinary what he can do with faces that are no longer there.
Is he of Ukrainian descent?
No, just a real good guy. Yeah. I think so. This is where I'll kind of end you with, and if you want to hang out with me, ask more questions, you're certainly welcome to. Why isn't this working?
While he's looking, Fiona, do you have anything else and stand that you want to share?
Yes, I just want to, this is ridiculous, it's so normal about my testimony. Yeah, that is, anyway, but it's just kind of like this. So I felt called to this. I felt called to this organization. I am so proud of what they do. And it's so nice to be able to, I'm not good at asking anybody for anything, especially their money. But it helped me feel a little bit stronger about asking for something by guaranteeing everything, every dollar you give this organization is going directly to help wounded Ukrainians, women, children, the defenders, everybody else. It's my privilege to work with this organization, but I do want to leave you with these last images.
So this is this is why we do what we do at ForPEACE. This is why we're so honored to work with these heroic Ukrainians. And we're so honored to have such amazing supporters across the world who enable us to do this. This is a guy, so this was sent to us. This is like caught like in the moment. So this is like 7 seconds. So I have to explain a little bit what's going on. But this guy has fought for 8 months all the way down to Kherson, where his, sorry, I'm a crybaby, where his grandmother is, right? He doesn't know if she's alive. She doesn't know if he's alive. And this is the first time they've seen each other here in 8 months. So. I mean, those are just the moments we live for, and it's not possible without this gear. I thank you for the reading the Talmud thing about. I too am a pacifist. It's very conflicting, right, to be involved in a war, but I loved that idea of actively contributing to peace. This guy had a really bad day, but his head didn't catch on fire. Same here. These are boys who've been shot, and because a donor was able to provide a plate for them, you know, they can go home at night. Again, here, why do we work with the military? Here's a bunch of our guys. They're bringing in food and water, medical supplies, the first time in months.
They're speaking Russian. They're all Russian.
Yeah, same thing for what Fiona was saying, that the soldiers are responding in Ukrainian, the locals are thanking them in Russian. But, you know, they're able, you know, they send them, our donors provide this, and the soldiers are able to get it into these people. And this is the final one here. This is a woman who is in one of these forgotten villages that Katya makes sure has medicine and our water filters. She's lived under 8 months of occupation. When she sees a soldier, she runs inside, and that's exactly what she's doing, right? But this soldier, he calls out, Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine. And so she's a little bit confused, and she goes, are you ours? And he says, yes, we are yours. And they have a fun little embrace. So. We're speaking Russian. So thank you everyone for giving me your time. You know, if you've been moved, please check out our website, forpeace.us. Please, you know, share our message with others. If you have questions, comments, complaints, you can, you know, I'm happy to remain in touch with you all. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Fiona.
Oh gosh, this young man is absolutely fabulous. I insisted that we stop at where was it we stopped? Buy him some new earrings. So I thought he's got to look spiffy for this group. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. We want to share something with you. It's really kind of cool to make you feel really Ukrainian hip. So when Ukrainians greet each other, they say Slava Ukraini. And then the response is
Heroism Slava.
Heroism
So let's all try it. Heroism Slava. All right. Slava. Okay, so I'm going to say it. Slava Ukraini. Heroism Slava. Awesome. What are you even saying? Glory to Ukraine, and the answer is glory to the heroes, right?
Thank you so much, Fiona, and Ian is.
Yeah.
They're saying it wrong before, Ian. Thank you, and thank you for those who are attending virtually and attending here. Appreciate it very much. And for your good parents that bore you. You know, and look at what you're doing now. That is so cool. And sister.
I don't take any.
But
credit.
she didn't bore you. But she did help raise you.
Some truth to that.
In a very big way.
So thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Ron, for what you offered us.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Andy, and your compatriots and what you offered in the beginning in the music.
Very nice.
That's beautiful. There's a lot to think about here. Ah, so much.
And the Stingers for letting us crash their home.
Yes. And again, the Spanglers for letting us be here.
Yeah. What's the, yeah.
So maybe we can close with a prayer, and then if you two want to stay a little longer, and if you guys are okay if they stay a little longer, there could be a few more questions. I would like afterward, though, those who haven't had a chance to ask a question, you get your first dibs up if you haven't had a chance to ask.
Tell us again that website.
It's on, yeah. It's also on,
Yes, we do. Here it is, ForPEACE.us.
it's also on my
Yeah, and I can,
website too, where you get the information for this. That's a good idea.
Awesome, yeah, I'll pull it up
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah. Fiona, would you offer us? Okay. Awesome. Whatever you feel like you, would you come up here so we can see you? Okay, thank you.
Yes. We are so grateful for this opportunity to be here this evening. We are so grateful for the gospel of Jesus Christ, and for the baptismal covenants we have made that invite us into healing humanity, healing those who are distressed, healing those who have given up. We are grateful to have each member of the Godhead represented as we strive to work for peace in the world. We are grateful for our covenant to care for those who struggle, along with those who require comfort, whose burdens we are able to lift. We are grateful for each of those covenants being represented by each member of the Godhead. The God who carries our burdens all the way through his life into Gethsemane and to Golgotha. God the Christ. The God who mourns when we mourn. God the Father. And for the God who comforts us when we stand in need of comfort. God the Holy Spirit. We are so grateful for this evening, for being together. And we close our prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. So questions, everybody?
Yeah, if you go to ForPEACE.us, strategically placed right in the middle of the page is a big donate button, and that will take you. Okay, yeah, so okay, yeah, so we have a PayPal. I don't think we have a Venmo.
Okay.
I think I was confused by those two things. So
Do you want to talk about the 100 women? What do you do with that? Isn't that your? Oh, I was thinking that was your friend that was doing the 100 women.
Yes.
So, years ago, my dad helped start an organization called Food for Poland because he saw that the resistance of the Solidarity Union was being crushed by
the union.
Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But what he saw their strength is that they wanted to resist the takeover of their own lives. And they wanted to do it without violence. And so the organization that we worked on was just to send supplies. And it made no sense. We didn't have the resources, we didn't have connections, we didn't have anything. In fact, there was a lot of pressure for us not to do it. Same type of thing, you know. And but there was one reason to do it. it's because it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I remember being on calls with Lech Walesa and hearing what was needed and the children starving and they were negotiating all these things, but just continuing to bring groups together and make sure it got to the people. And this was in 1981. And we never knew if it would ever make a difference. But when that wall came down, and not because of a war, but because gradually enough people had enough food and enough support to resist being crushed, that it could no longer be stopped.
Right.
The wall had to come down. And that was 8 years later, and I just, and I wrote an essay about Dad's Hope story. But the point of the essay is not that you do something because everyone is on your side, or you do something because you have enough people who will just overwhelm it. You do it because you're a person who knows it needs to be done.
Yeah.
And this is another example of it. Enough people need to see that, and this is what you're showing the Ukrainians are. We cannot be overcome. This is us, this is who we are.
Yeah.
And enough people seeing we can help them stay who they are.
Yeah.
Can stop overwhelming destruction from happening. One water filter at a time, one batter food at a time.
Can I bring you with me when I do these?
So I thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you for those. And I'll also say, I'm sure the food did do something though too. I mean, that's amazing. I want to talk to you now about what Lech Walesa was like. That's amazing. Yeah.
Others who haven't had a chance to ask a question?
Yeah.
I came in late, so I don't know if you did about historical background, but did you talk about the Russian famine?
A little bit, yeah, the Holodomor in the 30s. Yeah.
Also in the 20s.
Yep, the 20s too, 21, 22. Yeah, there was a lot of famine after World War I, and it's complex, right? A lot of it was man-made, a lot of it was, geographic, or I guess weather, the right way to say it. But a huge component is that, from 1914 to 1917, and then there was the Russian Imperial Civil War that in many ways was much more horrific. Fratricidal war is always that way for some reason. Civil wars are always the most horrific when people are killing their friends and family. And so, yes, I think perhaps some of the resolve I have seen, perhaps some of the refusal to roll over, I think is based in this sort of crucible of history that Ukraine has always been this. It's kind of like one of the more important places you'd never talk about, right? It's the heart of Europe, and one of my advisors at Harvard, Serhiy Plokhy, he's been writing the New Yorker. He has a great book called The Gates of Europe, and I can recommend it wholeheartedly. But he goes to great lengths to underscore that Ukraine's history is European history. Therefore, it is, if we claim Western history, then we need to claim Ukraine's history as our own as well. And unfortunately, Ukraine has always been sort of sandwiched between empires, and a lot of its history has been trying to avoid getting trampled by the empires that surround it. And I do think perhaps maybe a little bit that does build a sort of unique national character.
Yeah. What I was thinking about, I remember reading about it, the Russian famine in the 20s, early 20s, and just seeing all the problems that they had with bringing relief over there because of the collapsed infrastructure and basically intransigence of local authorities. They were using, I think all through Russian history, they kind of used food as a bargaining chip to ensure obedience. if people didn't buy, they got no supplies.
Yeah. Fun fact, yeah, so in the 20s, the American Relief Administration sent in like fed Russia, essentially kept Russia alive. It's like kind of this forgotten part of history. And Hoover thought that if you give a man bread, he won't turn red, right? That was his political motive for it. But there were a lot of people there who were also just there to feed starving people. And yeah, we had to build the railroads back into Russia. So you go to like old parks or train graveyards now, and there's all these American gauges and parts everywhere. It's weird.
Because it's different gauge in Russia.
There were like 10 gauges.
Yeah.
My
It's crazy.
takeaway too is what I've read about the endemic corruption in the country, in Russia and so on, that it makes it very difficult to push things through sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so much credit goes to Ukrainians and their heroism for holding off the Russian military thus far. Another large component is that corruption is so complex, so deeply entrenched at this point in the Russian economy and politics that it's not quite a Potemkin village, but it's like if you win the procurement contract to make all the helmets, you're going to skim off just enough materials to pocket that. So they have helmets, and some of them probably do work quite well, but who knows how many thousands of them don't really protect you at all. And this happens all the way from helmets to airplanes
On the Russian side.
Of course, the Ukrainians are dealing with the same issues. They're the same state for 70 years, 30 years ago, right? But the difference with Ukraine is that Ukraine is, it is like any other country, a country that has problems, but it is a democracy, and they are, especially now. I mean, a lot of people have been like, oh man, all these sackings in Zelensky's government. This is a very good sign that Ukraine is openly, aggressively prosecuting any attempts to misappropriate aid. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was a scandal in Ukraine because some ministers were caught misappropriating aid for generators. And I think the difference between Russia and Ukraine is Russia, you would in Russian government, you would probably never hear about that. But in Ukraine, those people were immediately fired. And a big investigation has been launched. It's opened up, other areas where they're looking at. And so, it's not a perfect place, of course, but that's not why we help them.
I've got an observation, I guess.
Yeah.
The whole Ukrainian defense effort that they're making, and the whole effort that you're doing, and something I've observed in my work around the world, is that there really great things happen because of individuals who feel inspired and follow that inspiration to really serve other people and to stand up for what's right and good.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people doing that, and a lot of people from Utah have organized NGOs and traveling all over the world, and people locally who are making things happen, and that's where the real action is. So we can make a difference.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Lynn is one of those. He's
Yeah,
been
he is.
doing this kind of stuff for a long time.
I feel so honored to be here with like you and the Elvongers. It's an amazing family.
There was,
Like, go
no, Charles, go ahead.
ladies.
Quick, Jay and I were getting ready to come tonight, and so we weren't able to pay too much attention, but we had the national news on. And there was a little tiny town in Midwest, I didn't catch the name of it, who.
What was it? Not
Yeah, it was
Chautauqua, but.
Something, yes, and they,
Really cool.
thought they might donate a fire truck to Ukraine. Now, if I thought of that, how would I get a fire truck to Ukraine? I don't know, but they did it. They got a full-size fire truck to Ukraine, where this little village had all 5 of their fire trucks had been destroyed. They now have
a fire truck from the Midwest.
Plus ambulances, I think they were.
I didn't catch
Yep,
that,
so
like,
other
if you're
places
rushing out the
teamed up
door,
with
but.
It's
Started with one person.
Yeah.
Started with fire.
Well, it actually started with his 7-year-old son.
That's right.
Who was watching the news, said, "Daddy, what can we do to help?"
and he's like, oh no. I would have to stick to my morals. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's amazing. Like this is a very similar story from, I think, I'm gonna say one of the Scandinavias, because I don't want to mix them up, but it started with like a family, and then it became an entire organization that donates all these. It just so happens that I think it's Norway, but like these local municipalities are cycling through all these ambulances and fire trucks, and they're replacing them with new ones. And so this organization will purchase those and they drive them straight down to Ukraine. Of course, they fill them full of all this gear.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like, governments and huge like they all have their place. And in fact, we live in a world where we simply cannot function without those things. But I think to your point, and in a way that was truly unbelievable to me until I joined ForPEACE and started seeing with my own eyes, really some of the most important things in the world happen because just one random person is just like, you know what, I don't like that. And
Even
they
if
go
you're
fix
7
it.
years old, right?
Even if you're 7 years old.
To Giles, because I kind of hijacked his tone.
Oh yes.
Oh, this is wonderfully infectious. There's no question. And I'd heard of Lynn's work and others. And what I'm curious about is how, if there's synergy or competition among people like you and say, To Ukraine with Love, are you familiar with them?
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. And
They
so
donated to our medical program.
They did what?
They're one of the founding donors to the mobile trauma surgery clinic.
So it is all synergistic and.
Yeah,
sort of
I mean,
innovative.
there are organizations out there that are weird and stuff like that, but I think we are very good at finding like-minded people who are eager to work together. People like To Ukraine with Love, they do things that we simply cannot do. We do things that they can't do, and together we make a great team. They're a large organization, and even again, like these wonderful, like the UN, now that we're a year in, it's sort of become routine that these big orgs are going to drop off these aid dumps at a site, and then now there's some structure where these existing smaller orgs like To Ukraine with Love we have a lot of Ukrainian partners that then can distribute that. So yeah,
Complementing each other.
we definitely try to not compete and complement.
So it wouldn't be competing with you to tell people here about the March 8th thing with Yushchenko coming. Would you?
Well, you actually probably know. I mean, do you know more about it than I probably.
There's some organization, I guess it's called To Russia. No.
Not to Russia.
Ukraine with Love.
I like.
Well, that's where she got the name. So
Ukraine with Love. And on March 8th, they're doing hate to say it, $1,000 a plate dinner, and the former Prime Minister Yushchenko is coming to speak. Now, anyone who is going to give money to this cause tonight, don't send it to that other one. I would feel terrible if anybody felt like they should redirect, but it should be an interesting thing.
Yeah.
See him come.
Wow, that.
I don't know if he could tell us anything as
Well, I mean,
personal and powerful as what you've shared. Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't know if I could outdo the Prime Minister, but
Yeah.
I know. Is it the earrings? Yeah. Speculations about the future. You're asking someone as a trained historian. You're asking a trained historian to speculate about the future. So how much time? How much? Well, I mean, how much time do you got?
Next 2 years.
Yeah. You're not gonna be happy with me. I have no idea. It's I think Ukraine could lose. I think Ukraine could lose. I fear there's not enough political will in the West to continue the support they need.
Isn't more the fear of a world war though? Isn't that?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's genuine fears of a world war. There's genuine fears of a nuclear holocaust. This is all very scary things I don't know the answer to. And this is, I think this is more my hunch than anything, but I get the sense, especially when I'm in Ukraine, that it behooves us to move quick. And by us, I mean just anyone who's on the side of Ukraine.
Yeah.
That time is on Russia's side. They have more people, and they are more willing to hurt them. So I think my fear is that we'll, lose momentum and that it will turn into some kind of frozen conflict, I think is a very likely outcome. I also think there's a great chance that Ukraine can win. I truly believe Ukraine can win.
Well, what about all these weapons that the West is galvanizing right now, tanks and missiles and F-16s, and
those make like huge difference. I think
I'm asking a pacifist. Of course.
Yeah, I know, right? But the tanks, Ukrainians need tanks. Also, Germans are reluctant to send tanks because the last time German tanks rolled into Ukraine,
It worked out so well for Germany.
it didn't work out so well for Germany. And also it's the same tank company, like those were called Panzers. These are called Leopards, there's a real physical historical connection there. I think the important thing about the aid that is sent is that it's like at every moment people are making this calculation of how much does this risk escalating in a way that now I can't control, as like President Biden or Schultz or whoever.
They don't want the technology to get in Russian hands either.
Yeah, there's that fear. I think there's along the whole way, there's kind of been like a weapon for the moment. And that has been important. So, like we were doing very early on, it was just body armor. They had like just protect soldier bodies. Then, we had a big phase where it was drones, because you protect their bodies, but now you can control where they go, so they can see better, so they don't actually run into or they can identify people over here that are good, or whatever. There was the javelins are these sort of point and shoot shoulder fire systems that were really important for March and April during the blitzkrieg that Russia did. These are really maneuverable weapons. So you had these small Ukrainian detachments running around taking out all this armor. But then the war changed and it turned into a more sort of fronts artillery slog. So then range is the most important thing. And so then they send these HIMARS rockets, something I think another point to, I don't know what's going to happen and concerns. There's just the fear of, President Eisenhower feeding the military-industrial complex. Ukraine needs tanks, and these tanks do a lot of good for these people. And also there's a company looking to make a lot of money off of all these weapons. It's so
practical weapons, practical testing of the weapons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're
of course. But okay, so if Ukraine wins, how do we get Russia to pay for this? And if Russians win, how can we live that down? I think as a Western society and Europe itself. I mean, it's just, it doesn't seem like that's.
Yeah, I mean, so, and again, I don't know how dark to get, but it's the reality. I spent a lot of time studying with people like Norman Neymark and Timothy Snyder. You may have heard this guy. He does the Ukraine, the free YouTube things. these are experts on, these are people who've spent their entire academic lives defining genocide, right? And I kind of have this weird thing where I'm kind of like, I'm on the ground in Ukraine and I'm like, this is genocide. Like, but like, you almost don't believe it, right? So I've spent like decades, or I guess a decade with these people, reading their stuff, you know, producing my own. It's a lot of it is based in ethnic cleansing, genocide, but you can't, like, you almost don't believe it. But the reality is if Russia wins or it turns into a frozen conflict, that is not peace for the Ukrainians who live there. Like, think about Mariupol. I mean, I can share a lot worse stories too. I won't. One of them is like the children are being abducted, and it's hard to know that, you know, there's anywhere from like tens of thousands to maybe even nearly 1 million at this point. But these are probably Ukrainian children that most likely will never be returned. So I don't know how we're ever going to correct something like that. Now, if Russia loses, there actually is a way for Russia to literally pay for it, and that is to convince your congressman to declare Russia a terrorist state, because then the international community, the United States and its allies, can seize not private citizens' assets, but the Russian state's assets, which is a lot of money. And the Russian state has a lot of its assets in US banks, and they can literally pay for the reconstruction of Ukraine with those trillions of dollars. So
But yeah, and you know, my thoughts are is that, like, this is the moment. This is really the moment we have to get involved now, because if we lose Ukraine, Putin won't stop. He wants to reform the USSR. And we are, I mean, we are on the edge of a global conflict. We really seriously are. Another one. So this isn't it's in a conversation with a friend of mine who is a political science expert, and he was trying to say, no, Fiona, look at Yemen, look at all of these other places where there are conflicts. And I said, yes, but look at Ukraine and look at the history. You're Albanian to begin with, and you know this. And then I realized, okay, he was the person who told Harold that there's no way on earth that Russia would invade Ukraine. It's like, you know what? Nothing you say is going to be worth anything now. But yeah, I do feel the urgency. I felt that at the time I wasn't aware of how big it is, but it is a point now in global history, and we are living in it. It's like 1914, 1939. We are right there, and what we do as individuals will really make a difference, I think. But it will also, I don't know, it'd be nice to be able to go down in history books as being on the good side. I lost 4 relatives in World War I. My 2 great uncles were killed on the Somme. They were 17 and 18 years old. Their father was a medic, and then their sister was blind, genitally blind. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
You should call us.
Yeah.
On your chair.
that's how most of us know you. Like, it's sort of a disembodied presence of some kind. Yeah.
But she was blind, and I worked with Morse code, and there's a huge tie there. There's something there for me and this war that is now generationally moved. I feel there is a lot of activity, you know, Fiona, pay attention, and do what you can. So, you know, I want to die with a clear conscience. I want to die with, okay, I was there. We tried, we were here in this beautiful home, and we tried to stop this, and we fail or we lose, but either way, you know what? I'm proud of us. I'm proud of us.
We are too.
Yeah.
Amen.
All of it. Yeah, thank you for being here. I mean, if you want to leave, please.
They're fighting our war for us. They're, I mean, they're taking a stand, and we're all behind them, just
Yeah.
We don't have to do the fighting because they are.
As long as it's Ukrainians that are doing the dying.
Yeah, so I think that, that's a great point that I think, at least up into, at least in, I don't know about now, but I feel like a lot of the specifically US strategy is not help Ukraine win, it's destroy Russia. So in some ways, it behooves United States in a sort of Machiavellian realpolitik Henry Kissinger way, right? To sorry if we like Henry Kissinger. Yeah, to tie Russia down into a long, expensive conflict in a country somewhere, and drive that enemy into the ground.
Like in Afghanistan, Russian.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you saying now that you feel like the United States is trying to
I'm saying I'm not
we're
convinced.
supporting Ukraine, we're really fighting Russia.
I'm saying, yeah, it's more of a question, but I'm not convinced we are supporting Ukraine as a nation state. So I'm saying the administration. I think that the American state apparatus and the presidency has they're going to sit down with a lot of analysts from the CIA, from the Department of Defense, the Joint Chief of Staffs, and they're going to run through very matter of fact. Okay, so if we try to finish this now, what does this happen? If we drag this out, what are the benefits for us
That's
there?
just unthinkable to me, that scenario. It just, I don't know, I'm not at that point, but I'm also concerned about the Republicans, a lot of them in the House, who don't want to write any more check for anything having to do with Ukraine.
Right.
And I think what they say out loud is that they want to give it to Russia
Right.
to win and beat the Ukrainians because they're on the side that those people are Nazis.
Right. Right.
I can see, take another example from the 80s, when we were on the outs with Iran, we were supplied, and Iraq and Iran started fighting. We gave arms to Iraq, not because we cared about what happens to Iraq. We just
Right.
wanted
Right.
To decimate.
Right.
Iraq.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, in my this is now my personal opinion, but it's like we're now invested in Ukraine. We've spent billions, and I would say, our leaders now have a responsibility to ensure that Ukraine has the support to use that responsibly, to rebuild. You can't just chuck a bunch of weapons at somebody and walk away.
We've tried that before.
Yeah, and the U.S. military has done a lot of really smart things with these later packages, which is less stuff and more like logistics support and training and things
Do you
like
think
that.
the United States is are you concerned though that politically we're in this jigsaw
Yeah.
seesaw and that
Yeah.
up till now, do you feel like we've been supportive, or do you even think that's probably questionable?
No, I think we have. I think just personally, Joseph Biden is just as an individual very concerned about Putin and Russia. And so in that sense, I do think that the support we have given is very genuine and very good. And I certainly don't think the other party would have done that. In fact, there's a lot of allegations.
We already know.
Yeah.
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 Do you think though that the strength of NATO right now, although I'm a little concerned about that too, going forward, but up till now, do you think the strength of NATO has been a significant support to Ukraine?
Yeah, I think the reason Ukraine is doing as well as it is because they're moving to NATO standards. So it's something to remember is Ukraine has been training on NATO standards for like 8 or 9 years now, since 2014.
Right.
So there's like the mobilized army, which are kind of like you and me. Like you give you and me a gun, like we'll probably figure it out eventually, right? But
Right.
we're not.
If we live.
Right, if we live, right, but it's like Ukraine does have whole battalions of like professional NATO trained
It
soldiers.
seems like it, right.
Yeah, and that is in part due like the big success they had up in the Northeast. You know, those were like run and gun NATO tactics where
Mhm.
they're moving quick with light vehicles and punching holes through. It's all like really complex tactics, but you know, they learned these all from the Western side, from the NATO side. I'm blown away that Ukraine is getting all of this gear to work together. Can you imagine all the different like
Yeah.
metric, imperial, like, just-
Piecemeal.
I mean, it's, and you know, like Polish leopards are a little bit different than German leopards, and now they're getting Abrams, and also they're getting British ones, and you know, I just, it's amazing. But again, when you're faced with genocide,
You figure it out.
you're gonna figure it out.
You know Michael Weiss, who's,
Yeah.
Pause for a second.
Yeah.
Let's call this so that
Yeah.
Rob and
Yeah, sorry.
Chad can have their home back, and then you can kind of keep that going,
Okay,
but I don't want to hold people.
Yeah.
You know Michael.
For all the
Weiss?
logistics. One more hand for these.
Yeah.